Let's jump right. What's going on, guys? Jared here, and this is the Run with Tobe podcast. I have Andrew here. This is episode 5. Let's jump right into it. What's going on, Andrew?
Not much, man. It's been I'll tell you, man, it's been a little bit of a trying week trying to get to the end of the year, but looking forward to the break next year. What about you?
Yeah, same here, man. Usually it's funny because we talked about this, and this is kind of like our first year diving fully into like entrepreneurship, and usually I'm looking forward to this time of year to having some time off because I'm getting out of the office, or I'm getting more time to work on my projects that I'd always been working on the side. But this year I have mixed feelings about it. I'm excited because I get more time, to spend with the family. And of course, now that I control that time, I can create it however I want. But at the same time, I know how much we have coming up, and I don't want to take too much time off because we got a ton in the pipeline. And
yeah, I feel the same way.
Yeah, it's going to be overwhelming quickly.
Absolutely. I think proposal work is going out, work is getting delivered through the end of the year. So there's a lot of exciting things happening, but I guess, it never stops, right? Especially when you're the one running the business. So
yeah,
but I am looking forward to everything though. It should be a very cool year coming up. So
yeah, I'm excited, man. All right. So let's go ahead and kick things off, and let's just talk about what's caught your attention lately. So what have you seen out there?
Yeah. So I have another Facebook ad, and I'll put in full disclosure. I'm not bringing this ad up because it's the creative looks awesome or the copy is awesome in the ad. It's actually pretty bad. But it was a company called Shady Rays, and the reason I'm bringing it up is because it's basically a sunglass company, and it looks like the guy is somewhere in Venice. It seems like he pulled off some guy from off the street in Venice and is doing kind of a Pepsi taste test challenge between two pairs of sunglasses.
Okay.
One pair is like the name brand, non-polarized sunglasses, and the other pair is the pair of Shady Rays, which is a pair of polarized sunglasses. So he goes up to this guy, asks him, hey, try this pair on. The first pair is the name brand sunglass. The second pair is the Shady Rays. And the guy says, oh, it's much clearer because it's polarized, this and that. And he basically makes the point like, hey, our sunglasses are $49. They're polarized. They look the same. They feel the same. And they're cheaper, right? Or let's say less expensive. That's the sales term, right?
Right.
Now the ad itself, it probably could have been done a little bit better in terms of the copy and the creative and how they went back and forth. But the reason why I'm bringing this ad up was because it was a Facebook video ad that I saw on Facebook, and it generated over 1.5 million views.
Wow.
Now, I don't know how many of those views were attributed to paid spend, sure, right? But just going through it, you actually look at the video, and we'll put a link to the video in the show notes. But if you go to the video, it actually looks like they shot it like on an iPhone or a smartphone, or like a DSLR or some sort of on a tripod or something like that. And the reason why I bring this ad up is because a lot of times when you look at creative now for Facebook ads or any ads on social media, a lot of people have caught on or using text and images. But as you can see, and through this ad itself, it's actually pretty easy to create a video ad, and it doesn't actually need to be like super polished. I think if you go to the show notes and you see the video, you'll notice that it isn't a $1 million budget production or anything like that, right? But it got 1.5 million views. It got hundreds of comments. It got thousands of likes, and people are actually engaging and asking informative questions about the product itself. So it drove the conversation with the folks who were actually watching the ad. So the reason I bring this ad up is because, if you're looking to do some advertising on Facebook, try and do some A/B testing, try to maybe do just the typical like static image and copy, and then maybe go out and try to shoot a video ad, just maybe of yourself describing the product on your iPhone or, whatever smartphone you have.
Right.
It doesn't have to be super polished, and A/B test them to see what gets better engagement, what gets more reach, that kind of stuff. So this was a really good example of how you don't need to invest, tons of money into doing some sort of video ad. So like I said, full disclaimer, like it definitely could have been done a little bit better, but the point here was the one I just tried to make, which was give video a shot when you're trying to do advertising.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when you showed me that ad. The first
You
thing
cringed.
the first thing I thought was, wow, like they obviously didn't care about the creative at all. Zero. Gave. I won't say that, but yeah. So they definitely didn't take any time to at least spend money on the creative. You're right. I think they just went out there with some type of low budget camera and just shot it and got right to the point. But yeah, like you said, it got 1.5 million views in a short period of time. I think what was that, like less than 6 months or something? Yeah. And of course it probably was pushed as paid advertisement, but either way, Facebook is still going to index that higher. They're going to push that in front of more viewers over static image, like you said, or text images. So yeah, that is a great point, and we have talked about that before, where you don't have to go and spend tens of thousands of dollars to get your point across. You can do it, with that simple little device that's in your pocket that we all have.
Yeah,
And
just give it a shot.
Yeah.
Put yourself out there, and you can kind of tell in the video the guy on the guy from the company on the videos, he's a little uncomfortable.
Right.
He's not naturally on video, but I got to give it to you, man. Like, you got to take risks like that.
Right.
You got to make yourself uncomfortable, especially if you don't have the budget to hire a whole team to do it. So
Yeah, you definitely got to go out on that limb. So yeah, we'll link that up in the show notes, guys. Shady Rays is the name of the company. Again, we're not being sponsored. We just found that interesting and that caught Andrew's attention. So that's why we're talking about it here. So let me tell you, mine is a little bit different. This is another brand play by a large company that has unlimited funds, unlimited chicken. But this is a brilliant brand play in the, obviously, as we've gone on in the later part of these last few years, health awareness has kicked up quite a bit.
Sure.
So a lot of these fast food companies that are out there are having a hard time, kind of combating that because they're not necessarily doing the best health practices in their, in their food
it's
cooking.
all about healthy, fast casual.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And not to say that KFC has actually tried to promote themselves as a healthy lifestyle type brand, but they have done a good job of branding themselves playfully and repositioning themselves to keep up in the fast food wars, I guess you would say.
Yep.
Is that what that's what they used in Demolition Man? Obviously, I'm dating myself a little bit, but Demolition Man, the fast food wars where Taco Bell won.
That's right.
They survived the fast food wars.
Yep.
Anyway, a little side tangent there. But so KFC is the brand that I want to talk about, and they're doing a really good job of rebranding themselves over the last couple of years. And it started with replacing the Colonel. They've gone through like 7 or 8. I think I even read an article where it said they have 9 different versions of the Colonel now, which is funny, but it's a different version depending on what the ad play is, depending on what the product that they're pushing is. So they've changed out the Colonel, which is kind of funny. And the thing I want to talk about is what they've done on their Twitter account. Now, Twitter obviously has been a huge help to a lot of brands. Fast food, it's customer service. It's putting out, things like you can order pizza through Domino's with just putting a pizza emoji, things like that.
Or throwing shade at people in Wendy's case.
Yeah, exactly. So KFC is like, okay, we're going to use our Twitter account to the max. And that even goes down as into who they follow. So if you look at the KFC Twitter account, they only follow 11 accounts. 11 other accounts, which is funny, right? You'd think a brand like that would, have a couple hundred at least, maybe other brands that they're associated with, because KFC's under an umbrella company and,
Yeah, Yum Brands or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
they're part of like Pizza Hut, I think, right?
Yeah, Taco Bell?
Yeah, I think Taco Bell's even, see, they're already winning fast food wars.
And Taco Bell's social media game is actually pretty on point.
Yeah, it's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
So they follow 11 accounts, and it directly in a line with their KFC original recipe, 11 herbs and spices. So on their account, they follow 11 herbs and spices. And it turns out to be that they follow the 5 Spice Girls, which is hilarious, right? All 5 Spice Girls, and 6 dudes named Herb. So it's 11
Herb or her.
Yeah, whatever. You guys can correct me, send an email in, or hit us up on Instagram or Facebook. Let us know that we said that wrong. But they follow 11 herbs and spices, and it's hilarious to begin with, but it's just a brilliant brand play. Again, it just gets you reminding like, oh yeah, that is the KFC recipe.
So how did you how did you make that connection? Did they put that in their profile, or you just clicked on like who they're following and you were like,
I heard about it through another podcast that I was listening to.
Oh, interesting.
And it instantly it got me like I had to go check it out. So I went to their account and I had to look at it. But it's a small nuance, it's a small detail, but it's so hilarious and it's such a strong brand play that I think those are the details that a lot of people kind of forget about. You know, we get caught up in some other weird, we get caught up in all kinds of weird details, that most of the time never pan out.
Or who's following you mainly.
Yeah, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Or just small details in your business or small details in your social media game, that may not ever matter, but details like that where it's public facing and it's,
yeah. So when we had, we would prep notes and stuff like that prior to, to doing the podcast and stuff. And when I found out about this, it actually it was like a different dimension to social media to me because, and again, maybe I'm just too self-centric, but I'm always worried about who's following me. All right. And it just brings another dimension to like how to use social media.
Right.
It's not only about the content you're putting out there. It's not only about who's following you, who's engaging with you, who's commenting with you, but you can show another side to your brand through who you follow.
Yeah, who you're associated with. Right.
I don't know. It's so clear to me now that that people will probably go and click on who you're following. Right. But that's not the first thing that comes to my mind. Right. And so I thought, when I saw that, I was like, that's 11, 6 and 5. Like that's the Spice Girls. Like
it's hilarious, man.
And there's so many ways you can parlay that. I think, finding 6 other spicy things or whatever, you know what I mean? Like there's so many other ways you can parlay that sort of that. I wouldn't call it a campaign, but
no, it's just a small detail that, like you said, it's one part of it that, it should be looked at. And just to kind of dive into what you're talking about, Instagram has a really cool feature that I think is really underrated. And it's been there since maybe not day one, but it's been there since the early days of Instagram. And that gives you the ability to go in and look at who you're following, all the people you're following, what they are liking. So you can go and look at a timeline of images and videos and content that the people you're following like. And it's interesting because and we're gonna go ahead and hit the hot button right now, bot accounts, right?
Right.
And building your social media through using automation and different bots, you can accidentally like and follow some weird shit, man.
Yeah.
If you were to go into that feature and people, it's a front-facing feature. Anybody can go in that follows you, or if your profile is public, people can see it. So it just for everybody to beware out there,
that's a good point on automation.
It's a breadcrumb trail.
Full disclosure, with some other companies Jared and I had worked on in the past, like we had experimented with automation, and one thing exactly is that one of the things we found was that no matter how well you set up the automation, how well you quote unquote program it, right? There's a good chance that you're going to follow some unsavory accounts out there that reflect poorly on your brand.
Right.
And one of the brands was that we worked with was a music festival, and we ended up when we were testing the automation, and ended up following a bunch of adult sites or accounts or whatever. And we actually got a message from a sponsor saying like, hey, by the way, you're following this account.
Right.
Like, that's kind of weird. So that put us in a weird situation. And that's when you're like, hey, if you're going to use automation out there, just be really careful.
Yeah.
Pay attention to it. Just don't let it run on its own.
Yep. Be really responsible. And if you're going to an agency or a company that is going to do social media for you, if that isn't the game plan, hopefully they disclose that with you first off. But secondly, hopefully, they're keeping an eye on that.
Yeah. And understand how the automation works.
Right.
Right. There's sort of a formula to it, and understand a lot of it is based on if you follow, you're following someone, there's this certain ratios that they look at and things like that. And I think, you got to really look at how that automation is actually being executed.
Right.
Right. And there's inputs and outputs that come from it, like any piece of software. So just kind of know what you're getting yourself into.
Yep. Yeah. And at the end of the day, content is king. So it doesn't matter how much automation you're doing. If your content is poor, it doesn't matter.
Oh, and know why you're doing the automation, right?
Well, yeah,
What's the purpose of it?
Just a disclaimer, guys, we are definitely not promoting this. We definitely believe in organic growth and full on real engagement. So, but we are fully aware that these things are out there, and we like to shed some light on it a little bit. All right, man. Well, let's go into the next part, and that is, what cool tool are you using right now?
Yeah, so this is a tool I actually picked up this week, and it's an app called Bookouts. So this year I made it a pretty big priority to just read more, and whether it's fiction or nonfiction or inspiration or life or self-help or whatever, I just tried to make it a point to make it a habit of reading more. And I found this app through the Apple App Store, which Jared and I have talked about this before, but Apple has basically turned their entire App Store into a huge content marketing play. It's almost like a blog in a way, almost, in the App Store now. And basically what this app allows you to do is it allows you to, it's very simple, keep track of how much you've read, and they tie it back to achievements you can unlock and badges you can unlock and things like that.
It's like reading fitness.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know why I get so enamored, because I think the last app I talked about.
If you go back through our timeline and look at all the apps that Andrew recommends, they're all like tracking apps. Yeah. Progress tracking apps.
That's a good point. Right? I need to dig a little bit deeper into that.
Andrew could build a suite of progress tracking apps.
There you go. Next business idea, Jared. But no, it's actually, what it does is it not only tracks your progress, how fast you're reading, like you would in the Kindle app. I actually like to read physical books. For me, it's just I look at too many screens every day, and I don't retain things as well when I listen to them, which is weird that I'm doing a podcast. So I hope you're retaining this, everyone out there.
In the future, we'll transcribe for the people out there that are just like Andrew.
But basically, it also gives you the ability to capture quotes, which is really useful I do a lot of personal blogging on my own. And so I'll, instead of highlighting something in a book, I'll just screenshot it.
Oh, cool.
And it actually commits it to that book inside
cool.
the app. Yeah. And they have a feature which actually allows you to transcribe what was done, so you can copy and paste that quote into the blog post you're trying to do, and obviously reference it and all that kind of stuff. So it gives you analytics on how much you're reading, how fast, but it's actually kind of encouraged me to read more. I'm like, hey, I want to move forward through this book a little bit more, because the app sends you reminders and things like that too. So I started incorporating this. It's on the first screen of my phone. And I've been using it every day since I got it, last Sunday. So
cool.
It's a great app. What about you?
Mine is a new piece of software, and obviously, we dive into some tech conversations here. We're, pretty big tech guys. Not big as in we're creating tech, but big as in we follow trends, and that's a big part of our agency, technology. We are obviously investing in the future of technology, as far as always trying, experimenting, believing in new methods and new ways to do things. And the thing that I didn't really stumble across it. Actually, you sent it to me. You sent me a link of it, but we knew it was coming, and that is Lens Studio by Snapchat. Facebook has a similar app, and I think it's called Facebook AR. So Lens Studio is basically the AR platform that you would build all these different lenses on, that Snapchat has been doing for the last, 2 or so years.
So for those of there who may not know what lenses are in Snapchat, what are lenses in
I apologize.
Snapchat?
Let me take a step back.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you go into Snapchat and you open up Snapchat, you get you tap the screen, and you get this row of circles at the bottom, and each one is a different lens, which is basically just a filter. They just call it lens. They call it lenses inside of Snapchat, but it's basically just a different filter overlay that you can use while you're either recording video or taking a picture. And a lot of them are AR related. Snapchat was doing AR before.
Augmented reality.
Sorry,
AR.
augmented reality.
Sorry, I just had to point that out there for anyone who's like, "What the hell is this guy talking
Yeah,
about?"
sorry. So Snapchat has been playing with AR since. Man, I can't date it because I don't know the exact date, but it's been 3 or 4 years now that they've been playing with it.
They were one of the first.
They were definitely one of the first. They were using the features of the iPhone that were available a couple of years ago to figure out how to calculate augmented reality. And for anybody out there that doesn't understand what augmented reality, it's basically you're looking through the phone screen or a screen, and augmented reality is it's mixed reality. It's adding a CG or graphical element over top of the real world.
And how does that differ from virtual reality or VR?
So virtual reality is a full immersive experience. You have to wear goggles. You're in a full virtual environment. Augmented reality is it's mixed reality. It's looking at the real world, but adding this element.
So virtual reality is 100% fake world.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Augmented reality is
half and half.
Half and half or
10%. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
80,
There's some element of the real world in it.
Yeah, and sorry to go on
I know
a little bit of a
we're going deep in
tangent.
this.
Yeah, but when Apple released the iPhone 10, that was a big feature
Right.
for it. That you saw this dinosaur like walking across your living room floor or whatever.
Right.
And that was, we'll probably, in my opinion, we'll probably see a lot more really good use cases of AR. I actually think the best use case and the most practical use case for AR is if you look at the IKEA app,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yep.
so remember, like you take measurements, you go in the store, you take measurements, you go back home, make sure that it fits, or you measure your wall first, you go to IKEA, make sure the couch fits or whatever, right? And with the IKEA app, now I guess we're getting into another app. Sorry, dude. But
It's okay.
You can actually place a couch like full size, like to scale, right, in your living room to see what it looks like in your living room, which
Right.
is an awesome application of AR.
Right.
So those kind of practical applications, I think you'll start to see more.
Yeah, there's a ton of them out there. For a ton of furniture companies that are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
There's a couple art installation pieces of software apps that we saw. There's also a bunch of measuring tools. But check it out. You can, if you're in the iOS store or Android store, just look up anything with AR, and you'll find these apps. But let's jump back into
Snapchat.
into
AR,
Snapchat.
yep.
So,
Sorry, dude.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's good. That was a little good backdrop for everybody out there that may not know what AR or VR is. So Snapchat released Lens Studio, which is their AR creation. It's a content creation platform. It's an app for either Windows or PC, Windows or Mac, and it allows content creators to build their own lenses. And this can be either a 2D lens, which is like a graphical overlay, or it can be a 3D object lens, either animated or non-animated. So I've been playing with this, and it's crazy. It's going to open up, from the content creator side, a huge door for all content creators that want to create, either for their brand or for their personal self, or if you just want to play around, you can create. It's endless. You can create whatever you want. You can.
Yeah, so the coolest thing about where we are right now in content creation and content marketing and is it's evolving much more beyond a blog post, right?
Right.
And I think these tools, like you're talking about, like this Lens Studio by Snapchat, it opens up the door for agencies or marketing teams or just content creators in general to build really cool, really immersive type experiences. And I was when I sent this to Jared, because I have no idea how to use this stuff. I mean, Jared's background is in this, right? But when I sent it to you, I was like, hey, dude, see what you can do with this, right? And when you showed me some of the things that you were doing with it, like building 3D rendered logos that you could drop, in the middle of your living room floor or the office floor or whatever, I was the wheel started turning, right? And I was thinking, like, how does a brand use something like this, an application to building brand awareness? So I was thinking, like, let's say you're a big company or a small company, who cares, right? And you decide to build something like this in the Lens Studio by Snapchat, right? And you build like your company mascot. It's a really cute a fox or whatever, right? And you have a company event, right? And then you have this 3D rendered object through this lens that's available only at your company event, and it's available to only the people who are in that location of the event. It's special to them. It pops up. They snap. They'll take selfies of themselves with the AR thing that you've built right in the background, and they upload it to their snaps, to their stories or their snaps or whatever, right? And people start seeing your brand in this really cool, like immersive sort of experience.
Exactly.
And so I was just like, wow, that's just one application for this. And because Jared and I kind of come from the event space background, like we're thinking like, hey, how do you get more people to take pictures of themselves while they're actually there?
Right.
And how do you get them to promote your brand while they're there?
Right. Organically.
Right. And that's a perfect way.
This makes it organic. And I think the coolest thing about this, again, this is nothing new. This is something that Snapchat has been doing for the last couple of years, but these are the kind of things that were only available to things like Mountain Dew and, Nike and these large brands that would pay, millions of dollars to run these campaigns with Snapchat, where Snapchat would build all of the virtual assets that they're going to use. They controlled everything on their end. So now this gives you the ability as a content creator to control it on your end. If you want to use it as paid advertisement where it goes massive to the massive market, of course you still have to go through Snapchat and use their ad platform and speak with them, get an account and things like that. But to be able to use this, like you're saying, on a
smaller scale,
right, or just on a more intimate scale.
Yep.
It doesn't, it's not necessarily smaller, but it's more intimate.
Sure.
It's just crazy now that you can just do this. You can do it on any laptop.
Yeah, and you know what?
It does take some skill. You're gonna have there is a learning curve to it. It's not you're not gonna just be able to open it up and pop your logo in and use it. But it is a lot more accessible now than it ever has been.
I kind of compare it to when Apple first opened up the App Store, and they basically allowed developers to develop apps for what was it, iPhone 3?
Yep,
I think right. And just look at the
explosion,
how cool, like the kind of cool apps that came out. And I think when you kind of open source stuff like that, to the content creator community, it's going to be pretty amazing to see like the types of content that are this is a piece of content, right? That's ultimately what it is.
That's what it is. Yep.
And I think, you're going to be as a brand, if you always want to be thinking and moving forward, and this is what we have to challenge ourselves with too, is how do we find new ways to present the brands in different ways through content, right?
Yep.
And I think that kind of segues, more into our discussion topic. So
just a quick note. Like I said in the beginning of that very long rant, Facebook has opened their version of this as well. You can now do this inside of Facebook has a stories product inside their app. And
tell me how you see like AR being used in Facebook in a similar way through
it's exactly the same way. So Facebook has stories that are available either in the Messenger app or in your daily Facebook feed. It's a new part of their product line. So they purchased a company a couple of years ago. I don't remember the name of it, but it did this mask tracking, and it was very similar to Masquerade, I believe is what it's. Yeah, Masquerade. That's what it was called. We'll link that up in the show notes, guys. But they purchased this company called Masquerade a couple of years ago, which was augmented reality. Mm-hmm. And they've been, tinkering with this as they have gone on with their ongoing battle with Snapchat to be, the first to these. It's an arms race.
Yep.
Who's going to have all these
features
for
features and social media platforms
for content, right? For content creation. So they opened up Facebook AR, which it's a very similar platform to Lens Studio.
Cool.
So these are both available now. And again, we'll link these up in the show notes, guys. We'll put out there. Sorry, that was a really, really long, in-depth rant about AR and VR. And if you guys have any questions or any comments or anything, please hit us up. Either find us on social media, just look for Run with Tobe on any social media platform, or if you want to email us a question, hit us up, ask@tobeagency.co, and we'll answer your questions here on the show. We'll obviously reply to you in whatever channel you hit us up on. And yeah, let's go ahead and segue into the main topic.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people out for the holidays and stuff, so we couldn't bring in guests in this time. But Jared and I were sort of brainstorming on what we should talk about during this podcast, right? And we basically said we're a content marketing agency, and we wanted to go back to the idea of what the hell is content marketing?
What the hell is content marketing?
Yeah, what is it?
Seriously, like what is it? It's out there, right?
Is it a buzzword? It's something that gets thrown around a lot these days. So we thought that, as a content marketing agency, we wanted to kind of focus in on, what it actually is. And I wanted to start off with talking about actually the concept. I'm going to throw another freaking buzzword out there, which is inbound marketing, right? And the reason why I want to talk about inbound marketing is because I think content marketing is something that fits into the umbrella, the larger umbrella of inbound marketing. And we talked about this in previous podcasts, but basically what inbound marketing is, it's marketing techniques that get customers to come to you, right? And I wouldn't say the old school way, but it's much more difficult to use what's called outbound marketing, right? Blasting TV commercials, sending direct mail, sending advertising that people probably don't want.
Right. Yeah. Let's talk about that for a second. So outbound marketing still definitely does work. Yes. Obviously, billboards still exist. TV commercials still exist. So it does work, but you have to be very tasteful about it, right? So that's why you see funny ads that make you feel a certain way. You'll see, maybe a poster that makes you feel a certain way or makes you remember something. So those methods still are very, very relevant.
There is a place for outbound marketing. I would say that outbound marketing is probably out there more for brand awareness,
right?
Reinforce like what you've seen, and it has to be tasteful because you want to leave a good taste in people's mouth when you go out with an outbound marketing campaign. But I would say outbound marketing is truly about brand awareness these days. And the reason I say that is because there's just so much content that you're exposed to.
Yeah, and there's so many products, right?
Exactly.
Everything is replicated, duplicated, whether it's a widget or a piece of software, whatever it is, everything has competition from all around.
So you want to get your brand message out there. You want to provide awareness about your brand, but ultimately as marketers, our job is to find ways to get qualified leads that we can sell to, right? And in my opinion, I truly believe that if you want to get someone who eventually is going to buy your product, you have to pull them in with what's called an inbound marketing strategy. They have to voluntarily come to you for some reason, whether it's a piece of content, whether or not they heard of it, a referral. Referrals have always been around, right? That's a true test of a true inbound marketing technique, right? But ultimately, like what inbound marketing is, it's using a combination of all sorts of digital marketing techniques. And again, I'm throwing another freaking buzzword out there. Sorry, we're getting really like nerdy marketing speak here. But it's a combination. What inbound marketing is, it's a combination of content marketing, email marketing, social media, SEO, PR, marketing automation, all these sorts of marketing tools and techniques that you can use to get people to come to you and voluntarily engage with your brand. And while I mentioned a whole list of things that you need to do for inbound marketing, like I said, email marketing, social media, all that stuff, I believe that content marketing is one of the key ingredients to driving a really successful inbound marketing campaign. You always hear, the cliche, content is king. And I think that holds very true when it comes to inbound marketing, right? So I just wanted to kind of set the stage there and talk a little bit about what inbound marketing was, and and basically make the point here that content marketing, which is primarily what our agency focuses on, is a very, very important part of getting people to come to you. So what is actually content marketing? I actually, before I started this, I just wanted to look up the dumb, simple, like Wikipedia definition of it, right? So it's basically a type of marketing that involves the creation and sharing of online material that doesn't explicitly promote a brand, but it's intended to stimulate interest in your product or your service. Now, hey, Wikipedia people talk smack about it all day long, right? But that's actually a pretty good definition for what it is. So let's break that down
I
a
would
little bit.
expand on that too.
Sure, go.
It's not only digital, but I think it's also physical. I mean, we've seen this, time and time again, the swag game.
Oh, for sure.
Where,
Yeah.
companies are handing out swag, whether you go to a conference or if you see a pop-up for a new brand, or even Red Bull does a great job of this, right? They just go everywhere and hand out free Red Bull. That's content marketing. It's a physical version of it, but that's content marketing. And that's brand awareness, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, this is something that's definitely not new, but if you want to separate your brand from others in your competitive space, this is a way you're going to have to do it moving forward.
And this ultimately means that the sales cycle becomes a little bit longer,
Right?
Because the initial piece of content that someone's attracted to you on may have nothing to do with actually selling your service. And because we focus on the mortgage and the real estate industries, and those are sort of the primary industries that we've been working with, an example of a piece of content that would attract someone to a mortgage company, for example, is building like a first-time home buyer's guide, right? And, 10, 15 years ago, you remember those mortgage, like the books for dummies,
Right.
Like C++ for dummies or
Right.
JavaScript for dummies. There was a book, Mortgage for Dummies, which just basically gave you a rundown of what points were, what LTVs were, all these, crazy acronyms and stuff like that. And what companies are doing now, and Quicken Loans does a very good job of this, is they've basically taken that book and put it in a PDF form, and they give it to you for free. But in order for you to be able to get that free piece of content, you've got to give them your email address. So you exchange something of value, which is your email address, in exchange for something that you find valuable, which is useful information. Now, this has nothing to do with Quicken Loans' 30-year loan product or 15-year loan product, right, or their Rocket Mortgage or whatever. There's nothing about that in there. But they know that once they get your email address, that's when things like email marketing and nurturing start. And that's why I told you inbound marketing, right, is a combination of using content marketing, email marketing, SEO, all these other things. So the whole discussion and the lead generation gets started by a piece of content. And so I look at sort of how there's so much information on the internet now that it's hard to just blast information in front of people, because there's things like spam filters,
ad blockers, right.
Display ads do not.
Yeah, nobody gives a shit about your pop-up ad.
Exactly.
Anybody out there that's still running banner ads, please stop.
And you're just gonna piss people off, man. Right? It's just like, God damn, this guy again. Like, I want to see, like, my ad blocker thing. I think it's probably racked up like
a couple million.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Actually, speaking of that, going into tech, so Google just announced that Chrome in 2018. Their version of Chrome is going to have a native ad blocker in it. So there you go. I mean, Google's blocking you, so that all you banner creators out there
pisses me off.
Find
Like,
another job.
You see big brands like Forbes and stuff, right? I read a lot of their business.
What I'm publication is the worst.
Dude,
you can't even go into their site without turning off your ad blocker.
Dude, they basically say like, hey, we make some of our revenue through display ads, right? And I'm like, hey, I get it, but that whole business model, I think it's
antiquated. Yeah, it's going away.
If someone is going to build an entire browser experience like Google around and integrate pop-up blocking, it means that there's not any value to the consumer to have that stuff. Look, there's a lot of ways to skin that. I'm sure I'm going to get flamed from folks who do display advertising and whatnot. I'm sure they have counter. And if you do, let us know. I'd love to hear your point of view.
Right. Yeah, we'd love to hear the counterpunch to that.
Yeah, but I just think in a day and age where you're inundated with information on the internet, you need to put stuff out there that allows people to find you, right? So I guess, now that we sort of set the stage a little bit for what content marketing is, what do you think are some really good examples of content marketing?
So one that comes to mind for brand, for personal, is Gary Vaynerchuk. Mm-hmm. And I mean, he says it to you. He'll tell you to your face that he's content marketing in your face. Obviously, a lot of people have mixed opinions about him, whether they like him or they don't like him. The guy's winning, on multiple levels. And his thing is, I'm going to give you everything for free, everything you need to know, tactics, very tangible advice, whether that's life advice, life hacking, business hacking, culture hacking, whatever it is. He just puts it out there daily, 24. It's like a 24-hour a day feed too. It's crazy. It's almost like the Truman Show, but in reverse. Like, we're not filming him to see what he does. He's filming himself to show you what he's doing. So it's kind of crazy, right? But he gives you all this free stuff, and then he doesn't put it out and say, hey, can you buy my, $29.99 class or, mentorship or whatever. He puts it out there and he says, hey, by the way, I'm doing a brand collaboration with like K-Swiss, and I'm going to put this shoe out. If you guys want to buy it, I'd be really grateful. We're just trying it out. And he sold out. He did this a couple months ago. He sold out.
I actually checked on eBay, and when he first put it out and sold out, they were going for like 2x. People were selling them like Jordans almost.
Exactly. Yeah, it's crazy. And it's a testament to content marketing. He's built this following, and his whole thing, if we're not going to dive too far into what he's really about, but his whole thing is attention grabbing. Whatever is getting your attention, he's going to be there to get your attention. But that's exactly what we're doing with content marketing. We want the attention, but we want real attention.
In a really organic way.
Right.
We want the right people. We want to grab the attention of the right people who will resonate with the message we're trying to put out there.
And going back to your point, it makes the sales cycle a little longer, but it also qualifies your lead at a higher percentage, right?
Exactly.
Which is a part that a lot of people don't. You have direct connection back to your ROI on how much it really did cost you to get this customer, but the percentage of that goes up so much because the people that are coming to you because you're putting out this content. They're really interested and they really want to buy your product because you actually are providing value for them.
So I'll talk. So when I was working in a job where we're doing a lot of outbound marketing, and it's a grind, man. Outbound marketing, it's like there's so many stats out there as to how inbound marketing leads convert higher than outbound marketing leads and blah, 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 blah. But dude, it's a grind. You got to build an entire sales team. They've got to slug through really crappy leads, right? And in the event that you do actually get something that does convert, like that's like 1 in 100 or 2 in 100, Whereas when you have people who are voluntarily coming to you because you put content out there, it acts as a natural filter for all the BS.
Right.
All the BS leads that your salespeople don't want to deal with, right? So if you can find a way to build an inbound strategy using content marketing, your salespeople are going to be a lot happier because they're not going to have dead wood. You know what I mean? When you talk about Gary Vee, so I consumed a little bit of his content, and I actually saw him speak at a conference. And that conference, it was interesting because it was the first time I actually saw him speak live, and I sat through a whole 1 hour thing that he talked about. And a lot of the stuff that he said resonated with me as an entrepreneur, as a marketer, right? And I had never bought anything from this guy before. Immediately when I left that conference, I went and bought his book.
Exactly.
And then I bought another book from his after that, right? And now he's, for better or worse, on my feed every day, dropping F-bombs and yelling at people and all that,
But let's talk about this is almost like Inception. So he has built this platform for himself, obviously, where he's on this stage of, this pedestal of he's the best entrepreneur in the world, or one of them, whatever that is. And other places like conferences now use him as content to market their thing, right? So they're like, hey, come check out our conference. Gary Vee is going to be the keynote. It sells more tickets.
Yeah,
he upped his rate.
Exactly.
It's this Inception thing of layered content marketing.
Yep, and that conference knows that they want to attract a certain type of person to that conference. And they know that if they book Gary, hey, we might actually get people who may have never heard about us or thought about us before. Dude, like Vid Summit, right?
Exactly.
I found when we first started the agency, a few months into it, there was a conference here in LA, and I'd never heard of it before. It was basically a video creator conference.
It's a YouTube creator, where it was, but now it's more all video.
General video. Right. And I only found out about it because I was following Gary Vee, and I sent it over to Jared. I was like, yo, you got to check this out. We would have never gone to that conference if Gary wasn't the guy speaking at it or marketing it, right? So Vid Summit ended up getting, our admission, right? And these things aren't cheap to go to,
Right.
A conversion is like over $1,000 here, right? And ultimately, like, there's no way that we would have found out about this thing, or even maybe we would have found out about it, been like, it's just another one of those whatevers.
Right.
But because Gary had his name attached to it, like, we're like, okay, we know how he thinks about, things in the world. We know how he thinks about marketing.
And we know he attaches his name to things that are quality.
Right, exactly. So, hey, you know what? Here's our money. Take our freaking money, right?
Take our money. No, it ended up being a really good conference summit. It ended up being a really cool conference. Met a lot of cool people. Saw a lot of cool things. I learned a ton of stuff that I had no idea, including about what Vid Summit is all about. So yeah, exactly. It was perfect content marketing. And companies are doing this. Forward-thinking companies are doing this. The reason why Adidas and K-Swiss and these smaller brands that kind of fell to the wayside are now winning over the bigger brands like Nike and Reebok. I mean, how do you feel about the way some of these older companies are approaching?
Yeah, I mean, so as a brand, like, you want to attach yourself to, and I keep using the word influencers, but they use influencers as content for themselves, and it presents the brand in a little bit more authentic of a way. It's still advertising.
Right.
At the end of the day, it's still advertising, right? But, Adidas' stock price has doubled. It's, I don't know if they'll ever catch up to Nike. Who knows, but clearly they've done a very good job of repositioning themselves and adapting to sort of the new kind of marketing techniques. And to be honest with you, I always thought Nike was kind of they always pushed the edge when it came to marketing. But you start to see like the K-Swiss working with Gary Vee. I wouldn't even call it a niche anymore, but they found the way to kind of position the brand by using people who have a following because of their content. And that content may resonate with the mission of the brand or how the brand wants to be perceived. So it's not just about trying to convert to that sale, but it's also maybe showing you about what the brand is about, right? Like the culture of the brand and what it's trying to push out there by how they're aligning with, influencers or people out there who are putting out content which attracts a certain kind of person. Again, I keep going back to the fact that, content is king. Just you can't, I don't think that's ever really changed, regardless if it's an outbound marketing campaign or inbound or whatever, right? But content is still absolutely king. It's just, how do you distribute it now? Who do you align yourself with?
How do you grab the attention?
Exactly. So, for me, man, I actually was thinking about this, and I kind of went back to like a really simple example of content marketing. And I actually watched the new Star Wars movie, and no spoilers here. But I thought it was awesome. I realized very quickly that a lot of people didn't think it was that awesome, and I got flamed pretty badly on Facebook after like singing praises for it. But I would recommend that if you're a Star Wars fan, you should definitely go check it out.
That's what you get for dropping buzzwords on Facebook.
I know, man. What the hell? But I would say actually Disney is, I would say, one of the kings of content marketing. And you think about Disney as, all the movies that they put out, right? All the animated movies, and now they're buying everything now left and right. But to me, the content that they put out is the movies, the videos, that type of content. But the end sell is not to get your butt in that seat to drive, a $500 million movie or $1 billion movie, because that's a drop in the bucket to them. It's about selling merchandise.
Right.
It's about getting you to their amusement park where you pay $170 freaking dollars to go to Disneyland.
Yeah, it's about getting your inner child, for if you're an adult and you don't have kids, or to get your kids attached to this brand that will always make you remember the happiest place on earth.
My wife and I, we went to Disneyland over Thanksgiving, and I was walking around there, and I was like, this is the only place on earth where like kids and adults, they feel like kids again.
Right.
Or they just feel, everyone feels like a
equal.
kid. Right. Yeah, exactly, man. And that's because like back in the day when I was, a little kid watching all the cartoons and Mickey Mouse and, as they went through Lion King and all those other things, I grew up watching all of these things. Right. And when I go to Disneyland, even today, after paying $100 and whatever dollars for a ticket and $20 for a freaking hot dog and, $15 for a beer or whatever, right? Like, I was still really happy to be there waiting in line for an hour to do like the Toy Story thing or whatever, And to me, that was like it kind of just hit me smack in the face after starting a marketing agency to be like, wow, like that is just, it's a masterful way of getting true lifetime value out of a customer for their entire lives. Because, when I eventually do have kids, right? I want to take them to Disneyland.
Exactly.
I want to make sure they watch all the movies. They're going to want all the merch and all the toys and stuff like that, right? And Disneyland was just a really good example of to me of how again content marketing you see it. It's always been around, right? And now we're seeing it more in a systematized application to digital marketing because of all the tools and things like that are out there. But it's been around forever. I usually kind of make the mistake sometimes of saying that it's a new school thing when it's not. It's always been there. It's just how we're going about executing it now and how brands need to really think a little bit more about content that will attract people into them.
Yeah, definitely. That's cool, man. So what do you think are key components of good content to make a good piece of content?
Yeah, I guess we talked a little bit about this already, but you got to provide value up front.
Right.
Like it's not, dude, if you put content together and you just try to get the sale with the first piece of content you put out, that's essentially an outbound marketing technique, right? And I think what you got to think about is how do you build content in a way that funnels people down to when they're ready to buy, you have a piece of content there for them to buy, right? To convince them to buy. But when they first engage with your brand, if you've never seen it before, it's got to be something that's more valuable to them than it is to you.
Exactly.
In a way.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess there's a lot of different components of this, but what do you think is important?
Yeah, I mean, same thing. It's got to be, the value has to be so high because, again, going back to the competition and the differentiator, like what makes you different, from X, Y, and Z company, has to be that value point because there's no new wheels, gravity's still the same. There's nothing really new in the world. There's cool ways to combine things, but there's nothing really new, right? It's just a new version of it, or somebody kind of thinks a little outside the box, but I mean, there's nothing really, really new. So the value proposition has to be really, really high. The second thing is the emotional tie.
Definitely.
You've got to make them feel some type of emotion. And that ties to also, who do you want your customer to be? So if you want to make somebody laugh, if somebody doesn't think it's funny, you already know that that's not your customer.
Exactly.
Right?
It's a filter.
It's a great filter. Yeah, it's a gate. And that goes back into, your sales process being longer, but you're also getting these higher percentage sales because you're qualifying the lead a lot higher.
And I think that speaks to how important authenticity is in the content that you put out because, with all the content formats out there today, like being able to storytell, through video or through visual images or just copy, right, is a really good way to be able to present your brand in an authentic way. Like, hey, and that's why I think Wendy's is their social media, their Twitter account is so ridiculous because I can just, it really aligns with all the other type of content they put out there. Like they kind of have this whimsical, funny thing. They tag on to funny hashtags and things like that. But I think ultimately the more you can present your brand in an authentic way through storytelling, right? And
that's Disney in a nutshell.
Yeah, right. Exactly. There's always a hero and an antagonist, right? There's a challenge that someone has to face, and we all relate to that in our lives, right? We all deal with that, and that's why whether you're a kid or you're an adult, right, you find a way to kind of relate back to the stories that they tell, right? And I think you and I talked about this new platform that Facebook, or not new platform. So Facebook has this platform called Watch.
It's new-ish.
Yeah. And basically it was a blog post put out by Facebook that said, or I don't think it was put out by Facebook, but it was some agency wrote an article about this and basically said that what Facebook is looking for is like kind of longer form video content that will go on that platform, and they're now prioritizing organic reach and all that stuff for longer form, more in-depth video content. So even these social platforms, if you're trying to reach users at scale on them, you have to storytell now. You have to have some sort of messaging behind the brand that is authentic, that kind of resonates with people on an emotional or whatever level, you know?
Right. So, all right, let's talk about quickly, because we're running out of time here. Let's talk about the ecosystem of inbound marketing altogether, or content marketing altogether, right? I mean, this is kind of going back a few minutes, but we talked about content is king and all these things live around it. They're components of it. And I think we both like to think of it as like an ecosystem where content is the heart, and that's like the bloodline, and then email, social media, SEO, paid advertising, organic or just brand awareness is all part of this ecosystem. You can't have one without the other. They all tie together. And let's just talk about like how we how we feel about that.
Yeah. So creating the content is one thing, right? And it's so funny. Like we talk to potential clients or clients that we're pitching, and they're like, Andrew, we created all this awesome content, but we got like 2 views on it, and that's actually, I know how that feels because I've created my own personal content, and I'm by no means an influencer. And it sucks when you spend hours creating this awesome piece of content and nobody sees it. So one part of the ecosystem is obviously creating great content, right? But the other part of it is also making sure that content is distributed correctly.
At scale.
Right? At scale. And so when people say SEO, like, and for those out there that don't know it, SEO is search engine optimization. Is basically using techniques in your content strategy that allow you to get found by search engines like Google or Bing or whoever, right? And that's one very important part of it, because again, you want people to come to you, and most of the people are going to start their research for something on the internet.
Right.
And the only way you're usually going to find it is go into a search engine.
Just go to Google, type in your question, and boom.
Right. So if your content isn't optimized for search engines, right, it's going to be really hard for those people to find you. So you can create the best content in the world, but if you're not using techniques like making sure your page titles are right, using all the alt text, making sure that you're finding the right keywords to go inside your content, no one's ever going to find you.
Right.
I will say that, for anyone out there who's trying to execute SEO with their content marketing, it takes time. You're not just going to show up on page 1 of Google ranking without a little bit of strategy and a little bit of patience.
Right. And it also takes A/B testing, right? You've got to test.
Absolutely. Everything is testing, right?
Yeah, everything in this is theory.
Another thing people kind of realize is that, hey, social media, like, what do we use it for? But I always see social media in terms of content marketing as a way to find a way to connect with people and engage with people on your content.
Right.
You can't engage with people through like you can't get comments and likes and things like that on a search engine. But if they find your social media feeds and they have the ability to comment or like or share, that allows you to distribute your content out to people who actually might care about your stuff, and for them to share it with their followers if it's really good content. So again, another piece of the ecosystem is social media, right? That's another way to drive awareness of your content. And I typically look at social media as what I call top of the funnel, like marketing, right? Which is, it's driving traffic in at scale at the top, but not all those people who are going to see it on social are potentially going to buy it at the end, right? And that's that filter that we talked about. And then, we talked about outbound marketing, and Jared brought up a good point that there's always a place for outbound marketing. And another part of the whole ecosystem is in content distribution is paid digital media, right? And I would say that outbound marketing with like Facebook ads or Google search ads or Instagram ads or LinkedIn ads
or billboards
or whatever.
TV commercials.
Exactly. Like with some of the more digital techniques, you have the ability to get super targeted, so you have a better chance that outbound ad is going to work, right? And with all the data and intelligence that we have these days, like you have a better chance, to be able to drive awareness at scale. So I think we threw around, and the last thing I actually want to talk about is email marketing.
Okay.
I think a lot of people discount email marketing to some extent.
I do too.
But I think it's really important because once you get that person's email address, that thing is gold.
Right.
Don't waste that. Don't throw it away.
It's worth more than a physical address.
Right. So like what will happen is like you'll get you'll get a piece of content, and I see this sometimes with some funnels is you'll download their PDF guide or their content or whatever, give them an email address, and immediately they're like, "Hey, buy my thing."
Right.
I'm like, dude, that just okay, unsubscribe. I don't want this anymore. So what the email marketing that works is what we call nurture email marketing, right? You get in their funnel, you give them your email address, and then you do what's called an email drip campaign, which is basically an automated email campaign that nurtures that person along to eventually getting the sale from them. So maybe you send them 5 emails that have nothing to do with your product, but it's super useful to them. It's somehow related to your product in some way, shape, or form. And then by the time
it gives them an emotional tie,
right,
or value. It gives them value on their daily life, or I mean, whatever they're interested in.
A motivational quote every day, for example. You're a fitness brand and you want to sell foam rollers or whatever, and then eventually what happens is you maybe for 5 or 6 days you give them tips on yoga, or you give them motivational tips or whatever, and on the 5th or 6th email you have enough intelligence now, which basically says, hey, this group of people opened 6 of 6 emails that we sent them. There's probably a good chance that we can sell to these 6 people.
Right.
So the 6th email or the 7th email you sent, that is the sale. You ask for the sale. You give them 20% off your first purchase or whatever. And that's what I think a lot of people fail to realize, is that there's steps along the way of the funnel. You got to nurture people into it, right? And like we said in the beginning, the sales cycle takes longer, all that kind of stuff, right? So yeah, that's I guess a little bit about the ecosystem, if you would.
Those are really good points. And just to kind of wrap things up, the 3, I guess, main points that we want to kind of get across here are: it takes time to build these things.
Totally.
You got to be patient. I mean, we're not talking about, $5 widgets here. We're talking about
considered purchases.
Exactly.
Yep.
So it takes time. If you have a product out there or a service and it costs a decent amount of money, just be patient with that person, because they're investing in, that's their hard-earned money. They're investing their time. And if you are not willing to take your time with it on the other end, because it's a two-way street. It's not a one-way street when you're selling or buying.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people forgot that with all the, back in the day when it was all outbound.
Right. Just push.
Bam, bam. It's all a numbers game,
Yeah. So, just be patient, build these systems, and show your authenticity. That's the big point in that. And then be consistent.
Yep.
Be really consistent. So consistency is always key. We talk about that.
One thing Jared and I have really just tried to challenge ourselves with this podcast is, hey, it's work to put together a podcast. It's not just it contrary to popular belief, like to produce a decent podcast, there is a little bit of production. There's some planning that has to go into it. It takes us at least an hour to record this thing, and we've got a lot of stuff on our plate, right? So I think if you're not consistent with it, you end up bouncing around, and then you come across as inconsistent to your user, or to your eventual customer, right? So yeah, I agree. Consistency, absolutely.
Yeah, and then we always talk about this, and as much as we talk about, just get out there and put something out there, whether that's video or branding or whatever it is, high quality content is always better than I don't want to say low quality content, but high quality, I guess, when you're taking the time to put the authenticity in it, is going to go a lot further than just throwing a bunch of spaghetti at the wall.
No, and I think people kind of get caught up, like, I got to post on social media 3 times a day.
Right.
I got to, I'm like, dude, first of all, like, you get no reach doing that,
right?
And Facebook, Google, all these companies that have really, really smart people working for them, they're finding ways to use algorithms to find quality content.
Right.
And it's, if you're a marketer or a content producer, don't just feel like you got to just do it for the sake of doing it. And if you start doing that, stop doing it.
Right.
Put a little bit of strategy together and think through it a little bit more. And, maybe instead of posting 3 times a day, you post 1 or 2 times a week, but you put a lot of effort into building the creative or thinking through how you can link that campaign to something else, and just think through it a little bit
Put it into
more.
your ecosystem. How is it going to link to my email messaging? How is it going to link into my blog, which then goes into SEO?
Yeah.
So it all connects.
Content, like a lot of, there's this term content curation where you basically find content from other people to post on your stuff. There's always a place for that. Absolutely. Right. But if that's all you end up becoming, you're not creating any original content yourself. Right. And that's really important, that, you know, you don't want to be the guy just sharing other people's content. Right. So yeah, I think, you know, quality is better than quantity in this case.
Cool, man. Well, that's going to do it for this year.
Yep.
That's it, man. I mean, when you guys hear this, it will be 2018.
It's been a crazy year. We've both in the world and politics and business and cryptocurrency and in our agency and everything. So I'm kind of glad to see it come to a close, but you know, I'm excited for the future, you know, and it's been awesome starting this thing, and I hope, you know, everyone out there has gotten some value. Hopefully, has gotten some value. It's been really, and if you are getting value, please reach out to us, because it actually kind of inspires us and keeps us going, because we decided to do this podcast at like 8:30 in the morning, which is very early for us. We're kind of night owls, and it took us a little while to get our bearings. But, you know, like having those comments come in and say, hey, I got some value out of this section or this section. It really inspires us and keeps us going. So thank you to everyone out there that's listening. And if you stuck it through the full hour, you're awesome.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Yeah, thank you guys for all the comments and just all the support in general. You know, everybody that supported us on this crazy journey that, you know, whether it's into entrepreneurship or agency land, or, you know, on just some of the fluke ideas that we have that we were like, oh, you know, let's try this. We think it's going to work. Everybody that supported us out there has been pretty awesome. So yeah, I just want to say thank you guys.
Cool, man. Well, Happy New Year, everyone. And, you know, I hope I have a great start to year 2018 when you do eventually hear this.
Yep. So we'll be back in 2 weeks with a new podcast. I want to thank you guys for listening. That's going to do it for this episode, guys. Make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, hit the like button, all those fun things, and we'll catch you on the next one.